So I was on the internet the other day browsing for things to talk about in videos, and I found a product that I don't know how I missed it. I have no idea when this released, but the moment I saw it, I knew I wanted to order it, try it out, and talk a little bit about it because there's something uniquely different about it, and that's this Nerf Power A controller. Now, if you're not familiar with this controller, it's one we've talked about a little bit in the past. Power A is one of the bigger accessory manufacturers making stuff for the Switch over in the US, and this is their wired design. As far as affordable, solid Switch controllers go, this is a really good one, although I really wish they did reincorporate some elements from their wireless design into the wired one. I mean, aside from the fact that obviously wireless has wireless, but the wireless design does feature a kind of redone grip design that I find more comfortable, and for whatever reason, the wired design has these gigantic stick heads, whereas the wireless one is more in line with how the actual Switch Pro controller feels, which is a lot more comfortable. Those little wishes aside though, it's still a really solid controller, but what makes this one different is the Nerf branding, and not just the coloration, yes it's Nerf colors, but also the back grip design is actually made of Nerf foam material, so when you grab it, you actually feel a little bit of give that comes from that foam. In fact, you can actually see how it dives down a little bit when you press in, and if you press really, really hard, you can reach the hard plastic underneath, but it definitely takes a little bit of work. This material is really the reason I wanted to try this controller out because I find it really interesting how it's used with gaming accessories because I think it has one very big strength: dealing with kids. You know, I remember back when I used to work for a certain major game chain, let's call it GameStorp, we sold these 3DS cases that were made out of Nerf material, and they looked completely ridiculous. They were huge. I think for most people I would not recommend it, but anyone that was buying a 3DS for a kid, that was my immediate recommendation because there was this thing that was basically just a tank. If you dropped the 3DS, if you threw it in a fit of rage,
gonna throw the thing. All right, let's go.
That was going to keep it protected because that foam gives it the ability to absorb impact a lot more. And so that was my immediate thought seeing this controller was, well, how well does this help kind of just keep the controller safe? Now that I've actually had my hands on it and played with it for a while, I mean, there's the fact that it only covers the back half of the controller, so if you were to throw this side would be fine, this side not so much. But another thing I realized while using it is that this is a design choice that we don't really see a lot in Switch controllers right now, and really in most common controllers. Something that's becoming more and more prevalent amongst the more kind of expensive Pro ones is this idea of cushion grips. And this makes me realize how much more I want to see that on the Switch. The vast majority of controllers out there, especially for the Switch right now, rely on having a hard plastic back on the grips, using the same plastic that's on the front of the controller, because, well, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's not actually the most comfortable choice for how you want to design your controller. This is why we started to see things like grip mods that allow you to exchange the handles of a controller out for something that's a little softer or squishier, or even wraps that went around the handles of them. But those are just kind of like halfway solutions, and so we really started seeing them incorporated in controllers right off the bat with things like Scuff Elite controllers. This is why we started to see accessories like grip mods that replace the handles of a controller with something softer, or even a wrap that just goes around it. But that only goes so far, and eventually we started seeing them pop up in Pro controllers. A really good example of this are early Scuff controllers, which they still use on even their more recent designs, where you see this kind of rubberized grip right here. Eventually, ideas like this made their way from third parties like Scuff over to first parties like Microsoft with their Xbox One Elite controller, and they even eventually added grip styles that, while not covering the entire handle, still focus on this little inner area right here on some of their nicer standard controller designs. Now, the importance of having a rubberized or softer grip like this is two main things: comfort and traction. In terms of comfort, it's the fact that it adds just a little bit of push, a little bit of give when you're holding the controller, especially if you ever get really tense while you're playing games and you start to squeeze with your fingers. That's going to get them really hurting over time. So having something that has just a little more give makes it more comfortable over a long period of time. Another issue that occurs if you've been playing for hours on end of a game is that you might start to get your hands a little sweaty, and that's where holding onto the controller properly gets a lot more annoying, especially when it's a hard plastic, because it just has a very slick response to that. So instead, the rubberized grip makes sure that even if your hands are a little moist, it's gonna still hold on perfectly fine. Now, there are some hard plastic controllers that have done things like the Switch Pro controller, which adds little dots and divots, which do help with traction using this kind of material, but that only does so much compared to how much better a rubber grip can be. And this is what really pleasantly surprised me about the Nerf controller, because when I picked it up I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll see how well it handles damage if a kid throws it. But really, in my experience of playing with it for a while, I've realized that while I don't like the grip shape too much of the Power A controller, this soft plush really makes it a lot more comfortable for prolonged periods of gaming. It's just a really nice feature that I'm really surprised the first time we're really seeing it on the Switch at all is a third-party, wired, more affordable controller option. There is no nicer option right now that's offering that kind of plush grip, and it just makes me wonder, why don't more controllers just start using this by default? By the way, if you're liking the color of this Nerf controller and you'd like it in Joy-Cons, an easy way to do that is with skins like these from today's sponsor, dbrand. They're totally safe to use on your Switch, the Joy-Cons, and even on the dock. They have a large variety of colors to choose from. Check out the link down below for more info. Nintendo recently has been talking a lot about the idea of designing the new perfect controller, and when they talk about that, they're talking about something that's completely innovative and breaks away from what people traditionally think of as a standard controller for gaming. And while I think that is an awesome, cool thing to do, I'm always for new innovative ideas, I think there's a bit of an assumption there that we've already kind of peaked how the current controller design works, and I don't really fully agree with that. Sure, there are some specific, very expensive Pro controllers out there that are great, but when we're talking about just the standard controller that systems come with and are considered kind of the iconic default designs, there's a lot of work that can still go there. I think when it comes down to things like button placement, we're most of the way there, but there's a lot of additional features and functions now that I think people associate with being only for expensive controllers, but really, there's not much reason why it can't be something that becomes more standard on regular controllers like this right here. You know, as we draw close to new systems coming from Xbox and PlayStation, and rumors that Nintendo has something lined up in the future, whether that's a Switch Pro or maybe even some other kind of new side home console to go alongside with the Switch, there's just things I want to start seeing incorporated with these future controller designs that'll be coming out. Aside from just having the same button setup we're used to, but having things like cushier grips that are more comfortable or additional buttons on the back that are remappable. Just things that I think we take for granted as being stuff you have to pay extra for that really, I don't think we do.